Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special spring-summer off-season edition of the Spider Insight Podcast. I'm Bob Black, and even though we are, 5 months away still from the next college basketball season, we are going to talk Spider hoops, both men's and women's Spider basketball, on this edition of the Spider Insight Podcast. And with both teams really still finalizing their class of incoming student athletes, we're going to get both Coach Mooney and Coach Roussell to discuss the new faces in their program, a little bit about the returning players as well, their goals for the offseason, and even answer some fan mail. We'll have some questions from our fans before we finish up on our Spider Insight Podcast. Let's get it started on the men's side with head coach Chris Mooney. Chris, thanks for spending some time with us. How are you and the guys doing here in the spring season?
Doing great, Bob. Thanks. Thanks for having us on.
Well, we're going to talk about the guys who are back, and every time I've popped my head into the gym, it's great to see so many familiar faces and returning guys on your team. But let's start with the new faces and the faces who actually aren't even here yet. You didn't have a very big recruiting class this year because of so many returning guys, but give us a little bit of an update on the one high school player that you did sign. Obviously, he's not here yet because he's still finishing up high school, and that's Trey Burton.
Tyler Burton.
Tyler Burton, beg your pardon.
Tyler is a 6'6" forward who has played high school at Marianapolis Prep up in Connecticut. And he's really a very good athlete, really aggressive player, versatile, kind of like that we always really prefer, guys who can do a little bit of everything. But I would say what separates Tyler from some of our other guys is he really is a good athlete. An outstanding rebounder, offensive rebounder, very aggressive player. His father actually played at Providence for Rick Pitino. In his final two, he took 2 official visits, one to Richmond and one to Providence. But Tyler had a tremendous AAU career and a tremendous high school career, is very anxious to get down, and we think has a chance to play and be a really, really good player.
You've alluded to this already, but normally when we talk with our players on the Coaches Radio Show, you normally have some sort of good recruiting story. Anything on Tyler? I know you alluded to his dad in the background, but anything else that got you guys onto Tyler?
Well, we Marcus Jenkins had seen Tyler, and I was going to a tournament and had written it down for me to see him. He was the first guy I saw that day. So I got down to a tournament in Orlando, saw him, and just immediately, talked with Marcus that we needed to offer, and really was so impressed with not only his overall game, but his aggressiveness, his nose for the ball, his relentlessness. I mean, he was really an impressive player. And of course, it moves so quickly these days. Tyler's father grew up in Maryland with a professor here at Richmond, and so there was quickly a connection. And then from there, we found out, of course, that Tyler's father took a recruiting trip to Richmond, was very, very interested, and decided to go to Providence and on from there. But, yeah, we had a quick connection, both in terms of I really loved how he played and how good he was, and then a connection with a professor here, and that his father had visited here. So it moved very quickly in terms of our familiarity and how interested we were.
A little bit unusual, Chris, in that he is the lone freshman in your class. This is a veteran team. You'll have the 5 juniors, redshirt or otherwise, the 4 sophomores who all played a decent amount as freshmen. What will the process for Tyler be to fit in with the rest of the team?
Yeah, you're right, Bob, and that was something we really considered on the transfer market, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second when we talk about Connor. But I think Tyler, he really has an opportunity because of his athleticism, and I think his mentality, is going to give him a real opportunity to play. I feel like with the 5 juniors who all have really significant statistics already in their college careers, those guys are going to be certainly the leaders of the team in many ways. But I think Tyler is probably good enough to push all the front court players for some time and really be able to give us another quality freshman. I think defensively he'll be very good. I know rebounding he'll be a very good player, and I feel like he can do a little bit of everything. And I think his mentality, as I said, really will help him compete at this level earlier than most.
Another experienced college player is joining the program. You alluded to Connor. That's Connor Crabtree, transfer from Tulane. Tell us about him, Chris.
Well, Connor, similar, Bob, and to some of the guys that we've had. I mean, Connor is about 6'6". He's a guard or a guard forward who happened to play some point guard this year at Tulane. Actually defended the other team's point guard in the American Athletic Conference. Really impressive. I think also could be a really, really tremendous defensive player. But Connor, similarly is very, very versatile. He can do a little bit of everything. A very, very good athlete. Reminds me a little bit of Ryan Butler in terms of how quick he is and quick hands, quick feet, jumps very well. Really good all-around athlete who had Tulane really struggled this year, but he really had a really good freshman year at an extremely competitive conference. So I think Connor has a chance to do very well. And, one thing that we looked at, there are so many transfers now in college basketball, is what we liked is he played 1 year, will sit 1 year and have 3 to play. So essentially he joins Tyler Burton's class. Whereas somebody who had played 2 years would join the junior class with those 4 juniors and Thomas Rubinskis. So that would be really crowded. And so, we're already a little bit out of proportion in terms of the class, which is, it's different now than it used to be. But 5 juniors, 5 sophomores, and now 2 in that freshman class, or what will be the same class as we go on. So that was important to us, but more than anything, we liked how well Connor played this year and how he did it against very good competition. His overall versatility and his really, really good athleticism.
All right, and if my math is correct, that still leaves you 1 scholarship available. Any plans to use that one at this time?
So right now, we're considering. There's still a lot of guys. It's almost June 1st, and there's still a lot of guys in the transfer portal from all around the country. Our concern in terms of bringing in a transfer is the same one. If we have brought in a guy with 2 years, he would join a very crowded class, which is right on the heels of a big class. A graduate transfer would probably be something. That's what we've probably been most looking toward and really trying to see if a graduate transfer comes available. We've had a couple that probably for one reason or another didn't fit or didn't work out. But our eyes are still open, and we're looking at that right there. And but I don't want to just sign somebody just to fill out the 13th scholarship. We want to make sure that they would really fit in well with the team. We feel like the guys we have on the team right now are great kids, but more importantly, just very hungry and really ready to go, and have had their share of setbacks in college basketball, and really looking forward to a great off season and next season. So I think that I feel like it would have to be the right fit, both in terms of position and class and experience, but also would really have to fit in with our guys really, really well.
All right, let's talk about the guys who are here. And as I mentioned at the beginning, they've been out on the court. You do get time with them to have workouts, both as a team and individual sessions and group sessions. What's kind of the focus or the theme of what you're trying to accomplish in the summertime workouts with the guys?
Well, I would say this summer the workouts have been really probably 75% defense. And, at this point, with the NCAA rules, you get 4 hours per week. So each guy gets 4 hours, and we could separate that any way we want. An hour individual and 3 hours as a team, or however you want to separate it. And we probably are out there 4 days a week, and sometimes a fifth day in terms of some extra shooting if we have a few minutes left over. But we're really focusing on our defense, and I think that number one, I feel like most young teams really struggled defensively, and we really did last year. But we were worse than just struggling, and I feel like that is something we need to address and fix, and make sure that we're good enough defensively, tough enough defensively, and physically tough enough to compete, to accomplish some of the things we'd like to accomplish. And I think that has been the biggest focus of our energy. Our guys are very good about being in the gym, getting in the gym, The summer isn't quite as busy. They usually have one class. We have our weightlifting and our workouts, but I think they understand they need to be in the gym shooting and making sure they're getting many shots and working on their individual skills. But more importantly for us as a program, our defense needs to improve significantly. And from the very first day, that's probably been about 70 to 75% of our work.
Well, let me transition into our fan questions then, because there is one about defense, and I wanted to save about the last 5 minutes of our conversation today for the fan questions. And this one comes from Don, who asks, what's the future of your matchup zone? And you have obviously tweaked and played around with a man-to-man. You've done some zone, traditional zone, and that favored matchup zone. Don asks, what's the future of the matchup?
Yeah, so I think that we're going to be a man-to-man team, and I feel like not only strategically, should we be a man-to-man team? I feel like at our core and who we are in terms of how we work at it, we need to be a man-to-man team. I think that the matchup, for years was a great complement to how we played, and so. The matchup emphasized some of the same things we emphasize on offense, but on defense. So therefore, it kind of fit together very nicely. It made it a good thing to practice because we were looking for the same things we were looking for out of an offensive player. Mm-hmm. His sense for the game and his skill level and being a good athlete really showed up a lot in the matchup zone. But I feel like it has caused some of the unintended consequences. I feel like basketball's changed. When we first got here, most teams still play with two inside players. Mm-hmm. Definitely one, sometimes two. I feel like we've seen more 5 out, all perimeter players in the last year or two than we would have ever seen in our first 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And then the less physical that they've made basketball in terms of handling the cutters, your post play. Your hand checking, which I've been in favor of, yep. But I think those things have hurt us and have created some habits where we're trying to patch some things up here or there and haven't been nearly as solid as we need to be. So we're working really hard at it, and I think we have some guys who can really help us, who are outstanding or potentially outstanding defenders who will really help us. And we've challenged our best players, who often. I remember going into TJ and Chandre's senior year when we started playing man-to-man. We talked to the team that our 2 best players were not good defensive players, and those guys really attacked it and became really good defensive players. Guys who really competed and tried and worked at it every day. And our numbers were much better that year, and we were a really good team and had a really good season. A big part of it was that, and we've done the same thing here. So I think our guys are embracing it and really attacking it, and we look forward to being a much improved defensive team.
You and I talk about this all the time on defense, that the mantra for defense is to be gritty, is to be tough. Is that kind of what you're imparting amongst these guys?
Yes, exactly, Bob. I feel like defense is a lot different than offense in terms of especially the way we play. We're moving the ball. Mm-hmm. It's free flowing. We're making reads, making decisions. Defense is a lot of repetition and being out there and making sure your feet are in the exact right place, or you stop and you do it again, and making sure that your angle is perfect, or you stop and you do it again. And so it's a little bit of a different than how we generally play. And play kind of meaning offensive basketball, but that grit and that toughness is in the details. And I think that like I said, I feel like Blake Francis is a really competitive, gritty, tough player. I think he'll really help us in that regard. I think Nathan Kao could take a gigantic step defensively this year and be somebody that potentially is a lockdown defender.
Well, you're getting into the next question then from Trevor, who asks, how many minutes do you expect Blake Francis will play this season, and how big of an impact do you expect him to have?
Well, he'll play a lot. I mean, he'll play a lot of minutes. He's probably even better than I anticipated when we were able to sign him last year off of the transfer. Everybody could see the shooting and the scoring, but his floor game, what he can see out there, his passing is very, very impressive. His defense is really dogged. I mean, he's very, very tough. in terms of how he attacks the defensive end of the floor, and then overall his competitiveness. I think he's a gritty player who really thrives on, he was essentially unrecruited out of high school. I think he went to Wagner, I think, in August before his freshman year. So, I think there's a bit of a, and he's not a big talker, and he doesn't necessarily say this a lot. I think there's a really healthy chip in terms of him wanting to prove how good he is and what he can do, and to play at this level. So he'll have a tremendous impact on the team, and he'll play a lot of minutes for us.
All right, we started our conversation by saying the start of the season is still 5 months away, which means the postseason is still 10 months away. But I'll ask one last question. This comes from Rory to kind of wrap it up. Do you think an NCAA bid is a reasonable expectation for this upcoming season?
I do, Bob. I feel like, when you're playing in this, we were at the conference meetings. Maybe 2 weeks ago, and the general theme of the conference meetings is how can we get more teams in. I think we had a high of 6 a few years back, and how can we get more teams in the NCAA tournament. And so there's everything to consider: your scheduling, your marketing, everything that could improve our chances as a league. And I look around, there are some really good teams. VCU will have all 4 starters back. Davidson will have 5 starters back. Rhode Island's really talented. St. Bonaventure, St. Louis will still be good. So a lot of really good teams around the league, and I think that really helps us. In terms of there will be opportunities for us to get good wins in the non-conference, opportunities for us for wins in the conference. That'll be really impactful and big. And I feel like this team, our biggest challenge, or one of our biggest challenges, I think, is to play well early, which we haven't done the past 2 years. And part of that's a product of being young, but also maybe just not being ready enough. And that's a responsibility on the coaches and our older guys to make sure we are and play well early and kind of establish ourselves in a really positive way so we can have a great season.
Chris, whether it's 5 months or 5 days before the start of the season, always enjoy talking Spider and college basketball with you. Thanks for spending the time with us.
Thanks very much, Bob. Appreciate it.
Well, before we talk Spider women's basketball, let's talk some Spider football for just a moment. Being a Richmond Spider football season ticket holder means you're part of our family. That's O-U-R. family. And along with that comes some great benefits like special events, Spider Brews packages, pre-sale ticket opportunities, and much more. Don't worry about moving your feet and losing your seat from game to game when you purchase your 2019 season tickets today for all 6 exciting games coming up this fall at Robins Stadium. Visit richmondspiders.com or call 1-877-SPIDER1 to purchase your tickets today. All right, let's get back to college basketball talk once again. You've heard from Coach Mooney on the men's side. Now let's talk with women's head coach Aaron Roussell and find out how the start of the Aaron Roussell era is going here at Richmond. Coach, thanks for spending a little bit of time with us. Welcome.
I appreciate the time. Great to be here. Thank you.
We're going to talk about some of your players who are returning in a minute, and I've seen them out there on the court. You've been going through your workouts. But let's start. I know they're all new to you, but let's start with the new student-athletes who will be joining the program as incoming recruits, first and foremost, and how important it was for you to keep those recruits who had already been signed. Tell us about them.
Yeah, obviously, thankful for the last staff and what they were able to do, both with our returning kids, but also with a few of the new ones, and talked with Elena and Angel. I think it was, if it wasn't that first night, I think it was that first day that we got the job. And, I felt like we kind of had to re-recruit them. I felt like they were on board. It wasn't like we were kind of necessarily at the risk of losing them per se. But you don't want to take that for granted either. I think this is a business that I hate to say the hounds would come out, but obviously, when there's some sort of some transition going on, there's a lot of other people, especially with the caliber of 2 players that we have right now. I think there was going to be a lot of eager people out there if they weren't solidly committed to Richmond. But both of them really, like I said, were kind of on board from the beginning. That being said, we wanted to get them to campus. So we kind of treated this as a recruiting process again, having them on campus, doing recruiting visits, and kind of doing the official visits, all of that stuff. So 2 great kids, both very talented basketball players, but getting to know them, getting to know their families, I think was important to us as well.
Yeah, from what you've seen of them, and obviously they're not here yet, although they're local, so they can certainly come around for sure. What have you seen, and what will they bring to the court for the Spiders?
I think watching Angel, and again, obviously all of this is, from what we've seen back in the day. We were at Bucknell, and not 2 players that we were necessarily recruiting while we were there. So Saw them a little bit, but really just kind of relying on film. Talking to high school coaches here in the area and seeing film. I think Angel's a really athletic player. I think just kind of, I hate to call her a point guard or a combo. I think she's somewhat versatile enough that can play a multitude of different positions. But I think just the explosiveness that we've seen with her and kind of her abilities to see the floor in transition, her ability to score in transition, I think will be a welcome addition to our team next year. I think Elena has the potential to be a special player. You don't want to put that pressure on anybody, but I think obviously she's a very talented player, was very highly regarded, highly recruited. I think the comfort for me is just sometimes you see high level players, they may not fit the style of play that you want to play, and I think with Elena she does that. I think she's got some abilities a little bit away from the basket. I think that hopefully at some point we can extend her range, and it seems like she's going to be comfortable at some point playing out there, but just her ability to finish at the basket and kind of at her size to go out and rebound the kids on the floor, both of them. Just watching them play, the amount of hustle, the times that we saw them on the floor, and the defensive effort. You don't always see that from the high school level. But I think that was encouraging. We'll see what happens at the college level. That can always be different. But from a defensive standpoint anyway. But these are two players that we would have recruited to our system. And I think that's something that was comforting for us and why we went about the process the way that we did. We wanted to make this seem, like you said, all of our players now are our players. This is not one of those, hey, I can't wait till Coach Roussell gets his kids in there. These kids are ours, all of them. And we wanted to make sure Elena and Angel both felt like they were recruited by us as well.
All right. Are there any others coming?
Yeah, Celia Satter will be coming in here. She's a North Shore Chicago kid, an area that I know a little bit. Another one that was already committed to playing for to the previous staff, and just another thing, kind of wanted to shore up that a little bit. And again, she's somebody that has some range. She can shoot the basketball. I think that's something. I think I've heard from our fans, and I think our kids know we didn't shoot the basketball very well last year, and so she's got some decent size and ability to shoot the basketball, and I think with the roster, the size of the roster, the number of players that we have right now, obviously is a little bit bigger. But to be honest with you, I think we're a staff still out there, whether it's the transfer market and a couple others, still having some conversations, not a lot, but still having some conversations with kids that could potentially be here in the fall as well.
All right, Aaron, what are you trying to do with these spring, summer workouts as you get to know the players and they get to know you, and what are you seeing from these workouts?
And obviously, away from basketball, but also on the court as well. I think it's just the building of relationships. I think that a coach that my coaching style, you kind of need to have those relationships in order to coach the way that you want to coach. And I wouldn't say we're demanding necessarily, but I think we're a coaching staff that's going to have some high standards. And if you're trying to hold somebody to those high standards, you also kind of have to get to know them. You have to be able to coach them hard. And in order to coach them hard, you have to be positive the times that need to be positive, and you have to be able to coach them hard the times that they need to coach them hard. So I think a lot of it is just getting to know these guys, having some fun with them, both on the floor and away from the court. But from a basketball standpoint, there's probably been a lot more shooting than maybe that they've been used to. I think we're a program, and you still have to coach to your players, to a certain extent. But I think we're a style of play that puts an emphasis on being able to shoot the basketball, and we know that was not a strength for ours last year. So it's been a lot of getting ourselves in the gym and shooting, but also from a conditioning level, and playing at the pace that we eventually want to play at. How quickly that happens will be a little bit dependent on our players, but we want to play at a pretty fast pace, and I don't think we're probably in condition for that right now. So there's been a lot of sweating going on in the gym and on the turf outside.
Well, Coach Mooney talked about a lot of time being spent defensively. That's hard work, Aaron.
Yeah.
Your girls are on the court doing what is the fun part, which is shooting an awful lot.
Yeah,
so that should be pretty good for them.
I think that, and combined with that, I hope that they're saying it's fun afterwards. It's not always fun during those drills. I think today, for instance, will be a heavy defensive day. And again, you hate to say this is only offense and this is only defense. But I think there's just some things that we need them to understand from an offensive system. I think we're an offensive style that I think can be fun to watch at some point. As much as I want to say it's very basic and very easy, I think I've also been doing this long enough to know that, sometimes freshmen, it's not always the easiest to pick up on. I think we always count on us being a much better offense in February and March than we are at the beginning of the season. Yeah. And sometimes the way that we play, and it's not as structured, you're going to take some hits early in the season. Sometimes it's not going to be as beautiful to watch early in the season. I think I need to remind myself of that sometimes as a coach. But I think it's something that we got to get better at. And then the earlier you're exposed to all these things, the more comfortable you're going to be down the road. That being said, we're not a staff that forgets about defense by any stretch. I think that's something that's going to be very important to us, and that'll get hit. It's just probably been a little bit more in the offensively heavy to start so far.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your staff, because you brought your entire staff with you to Richmond. I think there's a positive to that.
Yeah.
You all know each other, ins and outs, probably what each other is thinking. How much of that went into that? And also the challenge. Now, some of you have some familiarity with Richmond and the Richmond area, but just all of you being new to the University of Richmond.
Yeah, first off, very thankful that they all made the trip down here. I think they, truth being told, they were all really excited about this and probably needed to coach me up. And they knew more about this area than I did. So I think for them, I think they realized how great this place was, probably in fairness to myself, probably sooner than I did, and to be honest with you, there were some things that were attractive about this, but it really took for me getting down here to realize the special qualities and the high potential that this program has. So, like I said, very thankful that they did jump on board with this. I think there's a comfort, especially during this transition. There's a lot of teaching, a lot of coaching for our new kids out there. Like I said, they're all new. I'm not reteaching all these things to our staff. Our staff knows these things. They know how to go into a workout. They know what I expect, and they're not afraid to hold them to high standards as well. From a personal standpoint, it's been comforting. Obviously you're here right now during this stretch without your family here. But these guys know me well enough. In a weird way, I think I've spent more time with them in a lot of times of the year than I have my own family, and definitely over this last month or so. But really, really great people, and they did a fantastic job at Bucknell, and we wouldn't have accomplished all we did without them. That being said, I feel like they're a staff that's probably better suited to recruit down here in the Richmond area than they were back in Central Pennsylvania.
Why?
Just with I think with Brittany, obviously playing at VCU, I can comfort everybody. We have not seen any black or gold in the office, and so she's fully on board and really enjoying everything at UR. So her familiarity down here and just her knowledge base of a little bit Carolina area, but the DMV, I think she knows the DMV inside and out. So I think that's been important to us. We use it at Bucknell, but even a little bit more so here. And then with Darren, I think Darren knows this local scene and had his finger on the pulse even since he's been away. But having the amount of time he did, both at George Mason, but at his time, more particular at VCU, so I think that the comfort level there. And Coach Radice has been around for a long time. I think she was at Delaware for so long, knows this area, knows this league, and I think that's been a comfort for me.
How well do you know this league? We were talking before we hit record that you're back from the Atlantic 10 meetings, and even though you're new to the league, you were familiar with all of the coaches, weren't you?
Obviously being able to schedule some of those guys over the last few years, so I knew that league. I think the coaching world's just a small world in a lot of ways. So it was more getting to know the Atlantic 10 staff. It was really cool being down there, getting to know the men's coaches as well. But for the most part, you get to talk to them in a different way, but I think I kind of already had some familiarity with all the coaches. We were working that whole time down there, by the way. 4 days in Naples. There was a lot of work
That's
going on.
That's not where you got that tan then. You got that tan somewhere else.
We're glad this is a podcast and there's no video right now. There was maybe a little bit of, you have to get to know someone, just like your players, right? You have to get to know them away from the court. We had to get to know each other a little bit on the beach down there. But that was great, and I think the A10 really does a lot of things at a high level, and I think that was spoken very clearly at the A10 meetings.
Aaron, you will learn very quickly. Spider TV is everywhere. There is
always
a camera
looking. Here we
recording
are. All right.
the podcast.
It's the lighting right now. It's the lighting, I'm sure. That's
the TV lights.
That's right.
As opposed to the
That's
sunlight
right.
that you got
it.
down there in Florida. All right, let's finish this up with a couple of questions from a couple of the Spider fans, and both of them lend to what we've been talking about in the 10 minutes or so that we've been talking. This one comes from Les, who says, to improve a player's offense, she can practice shooting over and over again and on her own. How does a player improve their defense on their own?
Listening to their coaches. I think that's the first and foremost. Les Abernathy, huh? My wife's maiden name's Abernathy. We're going to make sure this wasn't like a former relation here that my wife slipped in a question. No, I think this is something, especially in the offseason, you're not necessarily working on, and that being said, we are today some one-on-one defense, but I think the better condition you're in, the more athletic you are, usually can lead to playing a high level of defense. And so I think we're doing a lot of footwork stuff right now, a lot of conditioning, just for the individual defensive stuff. And then for the team stuff, it's a lot of, like you're going to see today, transition defense, team help, getting to know a lot of terms, trusting your defense and trusting your teammates to improve your defense. But yeah, I think it's I'd say it's a lot of coaching because you like to think there's some of that on the offensive end as well. But I think you just have to trust your defensive system, trust your players, and hopefully there's some communication. Hopefully it's a loud gym today when we're out there working on our defense.
We will be listening for that. And finally, from Catherine, which of the returning players has surprised you the most since you got to Richmond? And I would follow that up by asking how much tape have you watched of the returning players so that you are in a position to answer a question like that.
We have. I mean, as a staff, and kind of gave each of our staff members kind of different projects to look at and watch their own kids. The way that we split up our players and kind of have different position coaches and different position groups. So I was able to watch some things from film, but really I think just watching them here with your own eyes over the last few weeks live. Jade's been a special player. Obviously we knew her and kind of recruited her a little bit back in the day and didn't think we were ever going to get her at Bucknell. She's just been a tremendous leader. I think just the effort, the intensity that she brings to a workout has been really comforting. When you come into a new program, you just don't know what the reception's going to be. But I think they for the by and large, they've all really bought in. Emma Squire, somebody who I know battled some injuries last year, but just from the physical conditioning side of it has been outstanding. And, I think Fee and Kaylin Fee and Claire Holt both have been in the gym a ton. And I think when you see people in the gym and you see their shot improving, coming from a coach who puts an emphasis and a value the way we do on shooting the basketball, to see those guys in the gym working, that's been comforting because you just don't know. You don't know what a culture is. You don't know how much people are really working on their game outside of the time that you've been with them. And those guys have really impressed me and I think have gotten better, just in the time that we've been here, just in the last month. I think they've shot the ball better. And as a coach, you always like to think there's a correlation between the time you put on the court and the results that you see from that.
All right, real quick, what are you looking forward to for the remainder of the summer for your staff and your players before they get back here in the fall? And it'll be go time before you know it.
Well, I'm first and foremost, I'm looking forward to my family being down here.
Yeah.
I think we close on the house at the end of June, so hopefully get our family down here and have some comfort with that. But just I think the progression, and I, as much as really the summers for me have always been about individual development. I think you have to make sure you're developing, you're getting better as an individual player. And then when we get back together in the fall, then we kind of put all those things together as a team. This year, maybe it's a little bit different because you want to have some familiarity in your offensive system and your defensive concepts as well. So I think just getting a little more comfortable in the offense. I think when you watch us, nobody's allowed to watch us right now because I don't think anybody wants to watch us right now. And that's not a knock on our players. It's just there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So we really want to make sure that we're getting a level of comfort that we can kind of look presentable when that time comes in the fall.
I'm sure that will happen. Aaron, thanks for spending some time with us today, and we look forward to conversing with you more as the season progresses and gets closer in the fall.
Absolutely, my friend. Looking forward to it as well.
And that will wrap it up for our Spider Insight podcast. Again, thanks to Aaron Roussell, Spider women's basketball coach, and Chris Mooney, Spider men's basketball coach, and to Jason Vita from our athletic public relations department for coordinating and setting up this special off-season Spider Insight podcast. I'm Bob Black. We will talk with you later in the summer. We'll get to fall when we know you'll be football fans, and then into the winter months when you'll be Spider basketball fans as well. So for Coach Roussell and Coach Mooney and for Jason, I'm Bob Black. So long for this edition of the Spider Insight Podcast.